So recently I watched Top. Have you seen Top Gun? The new Top
No,
Gun?
I haven't seen it yet.
Ah, okay. It's pretty good. Like all the conservative sites are hailing it because it's not woke, and it's definitely not.
How are the liberal sites
I
responding to
think
it?
I feel like they either try to ignore it or they try to attack it for being outdated. And is this America doesn't exist anymore? Like this America still exists,
Hmm.
as much as it ever did, just not where you live.
Have there been any liberal sites that have praised it at all?
Mm, yes, I would have to say yes because generally the reviews have been positive, and we have to assume that most of those reviewers are
Huh.
from liberal side. We have to assume that,
Huh.
right?
Okay.
And the reviews have been not just the audience scores, but the critical reviews have been pretty good. Now they don't say it's a masterpiece or anything, but they say it's a good, popcorn flick.
I
It's just a
mean,
good
that's is
blockbuster.
yeah, isn't that an encouraging sign? I mean, because
I don't know, maybe, but Top Gun isn't like it's not really a conservative film or anything. It literally if this movie came out in the 80s, nobody would say this is a conservative film. They would just say
yeah,
this is a
yeah.
film. That's all they would say. In the 80s, it wouldn't be considered conservative, just like the first one wasn't considered conservative, as far as I know. It would just be, pro-America, which I know this is ancient history, but conservatives and liberals used to both be pro-America. I don't know if you know that. You
Seems
know,
like I don't even remember that
like
time anymore.
literally, if we took our current politics and political, divisions and transported them back to 1939, I really do think that the left would just be like, fuck it, you know, let those guys win or something, right? They're just like America's not worth saving. That's really how I think they would feel, and like that might be hyperbole because they probably would not want to be under Nazi rule, but I just don't think they would be that patriotic. But when you go back to the 1940s, clearly everybody was. It wasn't a partisan issue whether or not you were pro-America. That's ridiculous, right? It's like, are you pro like babies or something? Like, well, who hates babies? I
I'm
have
not
a
a huge
feeling that.
fan. I'm not a
Oh
huge fan
yeah,
of
but
that.
you wouldn't want them exterminated or something, right?
Right.
So, it's just so weird that we're talking about a vaguely pro-America film as being conservative when anyway, the point I'm getting at is the new Top Gun actually is very diverse. It has a lot of black pilots and even has a female pilot.
Ooh, I didn't know that
It
actually.
does, it does. And I wouldn't say that's representative necessarily of actual pilots. I think most actual pilots, this won't shock anybody, most actual pilots are still white guys, and a lot of them are from the South. These are guys in the military, so it makes sense. But there are black pilots, there are female pilots, they exist. So, of course, there's nothing wrong with them being
Are there
represented.
is the pilot in Top Gun black female?
No, the main pilot is still Tom Cruise.
Okay, but I mean, are there black female pilots? I guess in Top Gun.
No, there are no black female pilots and there are no black female trans pilots. So I guess maybe you could
Okay.
call it bigoted on some level, but it has a female pilot and it
I'm
has
just wondering. Yeah, I'm just
multiple
wondering
black
how.
pilots.
Like, did you research it at all? I'm wondering like how many.
No, I didn't. Just from what I
Okay.
know from people I
Okay.
know in the military.
Okay.
They exist. Black
Yeah.
pilots exist. Female pilots exist. So nothing wrong with them being represented in a film, of course. But the thing was, Top Gun did it in a way that wasn't woke. It just wasn't, obtrusive. It wasn't annoying. It wasn't so in your face. They were just presented as equal, qualified people who happen to be female, who happen to be black, but they fit in with their group. They didn't have long soliloquies about being a woman in this
hmm
world, or being a female pilot, or being a black pilot, or whatever like garbage that would be inserted into your typical Hollywood film.
Do you think we can
That
assume that people who are listening are aware of examples of the above, or
Oh, I
do,
would I would hope they would be aware. I'm not going to list them. We'll talk about them,
all
but
right? 'Cause
yeah, I'm
I
sure
mean, I
they
just
they
off the top of my head, I recall watching I don't know him or
like the
whatever.
last 10 Marvel films. How about that?
Okay, okay, yeah.
Right? That has a huge audience. But this film is different. The people who are quote unquote diverse are just presented as qualified people, characters with some depth beyond their identity, with a storyline.
Wow.
What a shock. What a shock that that would be received well. And what a shock that that would be received well by people who are quote unquote, literal Nazis or bigots, whatever. And I think it just sort of proves A, that diversity can be done in a way that is artistic and logical and not contrived, that people, all sorts of people, the vast majority of people would accept. Because I didn't hear a lot of people on the right complaining about, oh, there's a woman in this. I'm like, well, there are female Navy pilots. What is your problem?
Hmm. Hmm.
Oh, there's a black pilot. Like, no, no, I didn't hear anyone say that. Because yeah, there are black pilots. So what?
Yep.
Right? There's nothing wrong with it. They're just qualified. Clearly, they're qualified. I mean, I would hope, and
Although,
I think
yeah,
I would assume that still the Navy is hiring pilots based on them being qualified. Who knows if that stays the case in the future, but for now, I think that's the case.
yeah. I was gonna say like I do think kind of all the I mean the wokeness stuff it has backfired a lot for I mean for people like me. I wouldn't have even given any scrutiny to a black pilot like let's say I don't know 10 years ago, right?
No, because they just
Now,
sort of put them in there
yeah,
without the overt political undertone, right?
right. Now every time there's can I say that black pilot appears on the screen, I have to think about was this planted because of for diversity reasons?
Right. So that's sort of what it's done to us. It's just taken us out of the art. It just you know
Yep.
taking us out of the suspension of disbelief. We have to just be constantly thinking about things. And it's not just us. It's, people on the left also have this problem. They're they don't enjoy films anymore either, by the way. Whenever they watch a film, they're constantly counting like what's the representation like? Are there enough of this? Are there enough of that? Does this film pass the Bechdel test? Do you know what that is, by the way?
No, I don't know what that is.
The Bechdel test is, do you ever see a woman talking to another woman? And they're not talking about a man.
Huh.
And there's films that fail that because whenever there's a woman on the screen, they're either talking to a man, or they're talking to another woman about a man, or it's related to a man in some way, and this somehow makes the film regressive. I don't know. I don't know what the hell it makes it wrong. It makes it not good art. I don't know what their argument is. It's dumb,
That, yeah,
but
okay. So
has a
obviously,
name.
yeah. Obviously my gut reaction to that is how stupid is that, right? But then I guess it would be interesting to go back and see, if there are like what if statistically almost all the conversations fell into that those categories? I mean, that would be an interesting pattern, I
Oh,
think,
but they
to observe.
yes, they do break it down statistically. There have been
Okay.
people who've wasted their time and went and watched films and determined which films passed the Bechdel test and which films didn't. So clearly somebody watched those films and, with their little notepad, determine, oh, a woman, is she talking to a woman? Is she talking about a man? They've gone through films and actually determined. So what I'm trying to say is
Wouldn't yeah, again
they're
playing
not
devil's
enjoying the movies either. They're looking for all
right,
this stuff, which
right.
totally ruins it for them, I'm sure.
Wouldn't it be kind of interesting to know a little bit about what their rationale is for this? I mean, I don't know. Like,
Well, the rationale is that
I'm a little curious.
females deserve the equal representation, and if a female is talking to a man, or if a female is talking to a woman about a man, then it's still about men. Which doesn't make
Mm.
sense to me, because if two men were talking to each other about a woman, would you say that men were not represented on the screen or something? You would say no. That doesn't make any sense,
That doesn't make any sense at all.
right? So why is it when two women are talking about men, suddenly this doesn't represent women or something? Because I'll be honest with you, I know women, and they do often talk about men. And you know what? When they're talking to other women, they're also often talking about men. So why is this like so strange? So anyway, that's a thing. And
Hmm.
the left, they watch films under this through this lens, which I'm sure ruins the enjoyment for them too. So small consolation, films are kind of ruined for them too. They're ruined for you, but they're also ruined for them. So nobody's
Don't you?
enjoying films
Yeah.
anymore.
Don't you get the feeling that the left doesn't even really care about fun, really? Like the left isn't fun.
Yeah, they're I. That's my impression, but I don't know that that's a fair impression because
Hmm.
I do know people who are leftists, and I'm sure they have fun. But here's the thing: when they have fun, they're not thinking about their politics, right? I don't have
Yep.
fun when I'm thinking about my politics. I can't imagine that they are. But the problem is they want to think about them all the time. They're watching a Marvel film and they want to think about it, whereas I just want escapism,
Yeah.
right? And so when I watch a film or play a video game, I can have fun because I can sort of turn that off, not think about politics, and just enjoy the art, enjoy the experience. Whereas they never want to turn it off, and therefore, yeah, they have fun less often. They can only have it when they actually turn it off, which I would hope they can do. You know, at least like, can they at least do it when they're having sex? Maybe, right? Like, do you think
That's a
about
really
as like
that's
I'm
an
having
interesting
sex with
question.
another human? Is what's the representation like? It's like, well, there's you, and you're a this. I won't even say what this is. Could be one of any like 37 things these days.
uh,
And there's the other person, or maybe the other three people, and whatever they are, right?
I wonder
Maybe.
what would a leftist woman say if you asked them about the representation of, among their lovers?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know, but but
Yeah.
you can only enjoy things when you turn that shit off. And I
Mm.
would hope for their sake that they at least turn it off during sexual intercourse.
But there's been a trend of progressives or leftists bringing politics into everything. That I feel like
Yeah.
that's been their
And you might say, well, that's extreme. Of course, they don't think about it during sex. I'm like, well, 10 years ago, I would have said it's extreme for them to be thinking about politics watching Iron Man.
yeah, or
And,
basketball.
right, or basketball. And yet they're doing it now. It's a thing. So who knows what is reasonable to them? I don't know. So that's the little bit I had about Top Gun. You didn't see it yet, but I saw it. Good film. I recommend it, and it
I
handles
want to watch it.
diversity. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
I
handles
want.
diversity in the quote unquote right way. And by right way, I just mean just present people as like more three dimensional than their skin identity or gender identity, and focus more on the characters and the story, and that stuff is
Wait,
secondary.
that's so interesting because like if there's a tension or contradiction between that and the desire for somebody to be loved for who quote unquote, who they are, right? That there's an interesting tension there because you can imagine if a leftist woman is saying that, oh, I want to be loved who I am,
Hmm. Hmm.
like on some level, if they actually believe what they're saying themselves, that would mean that they're telling the other person to basically love them for their gender, the racial identity, right? Because
Essentially,
that's
yeah,
that's
because that's such a big part of their identity.
yeah. So they're basically saying, love me for uh, being a white woman, right? Like
Right.
that is just
But at the
nonsensical,
same time, they
obviously.
hate that. But at the same time,
Yeah.
they hate that. Like, if you're a white guy and you have yellow fever, and we know many white guys that do, right? And then there's these Asian women who are dating white guys, and then the first thing that offends them is being fetishized. It's like, are you dating me just because I'm Asian? It's like, well, yes. And part of the reason you can't really blame me is because all you talk about every day is being an Asian woman. So why can you now blame me for loving Asian women and not, your first name here or whatever, and
Yeah.
all your little quirks and things that make you unique beyond just being an Asian woman, when you barely talk about those unique idiosyncrasies, and you mostly talk about being an Asian woman in this world. So
Yeah.
you really asked for it, you know, in a way. You asked for it. You're being fetishized for that identity.
Yeah. To me, I'm just reminded of how hard it is to like the more lies you tell, the harder it is to maintain a consistent picture, right? And I feel like the left is just they got so many lies going on that it's impossible for them to be consistent
Right.
anymore.